Hi, I'm Rory Malcolm. I'm an engineer at Incident.io, and today I'm going to be talking about Terraform Aware, how to build an infrastructure as code flow that works alongside, not against, your dashboard user experience. The base of this is a bit of work that we've been doing recently at Incident in order to sort of make our dashboard no longer just something that Terraform configures remotely, but something that is intimately aware of how our users are using Terraform to configure our product and makes accommodations to support that as a first-party interface into the configuration of our product. So who am I? I'm an engineer on the on-call team at Incident.io, and Incident.io is an incident management provider that lets you run smarter incidents from start to finish. We have three products. We have our incident response product, which is called Response. It manages communication throughout your organization when incidents are occurring. So this does things like allows you to notify the customer success managers that are the people that are impacted by the affected customers. It lets you pull the right teams in when you need to. It lets you share incident updates through to senior management when they need to. That's our product for internal communication and incident management, and then we have our status page product, which allows you to communicate internally, publicly, and privately to customers when your service is having issues, and it lets you give them updates promptly when that is occurring. And then finally, we have the product that I work on, which is On-Call. On-Call is our paging product that lets you get the right people in the room when it matters. We support scheduling, escalation paths, alerts, and all that sort of good stuff. It basically allows you, from the first time an error fires in production, to bring the right people in immediately and escalate up the tree when a problem becomes larger than just something that requires one engineer. So where does Terraform come into this? So we've long had a Terraform provider since some of the earliest days of the company. Everyone here is a long-time user of Terraform and likes Terraform and understands how Terraform works and what we think is good when we're building for Terraform. But our provider for a long time only supported a subset of the total configuration options that are available to you with Incident. Some of our more complicated products were things that we didn't support yet. So there's things like workflows and on-call, and there was a whole load of the product surface area where customers were like, we love that we're interacting with Incident using Terraform currently, but we really like it if we could do more, right? I'd like it if I can manage my whole incident configuration in Terraform. So as part of this work, we started thinking about workflows. So workflows are one of the most powerful parts of our product, but with power comes great complexity, and they basically is a workflow engine, right, that allows you to customize Incident to your organization's needs, right? And this allows you to, in response to a whole number of events that can occur with Incident platform, allows you to conditionally and logically take actions within the Incident platform in order to achieve the goals that you want, right? So this here is one that I've taken from our production account. When an incident is created or changed, and it's major, we invite the customer success managers to that channel. So this is just a simple little workflow that shows the sorts of things that can be achieved in Incident, but this has become a core part of our customers' response operations. People use it to page the teams that they need. There's a whole load of things inside of workflows that are mission critical, right? And we treat any sort of modification or code change to workflows as an incredibly important thing. And we've spent a long time making sure that the workflow editor allows you to express this complexity in a way that's safe. So, for example, these are some of the configuration options, and each of these introduces new logical and sort of security constraints on what we can do with workflows, right? We want to, when a workflow is about to run on a private incident, which might have sensitive information inside of it, we want you to know that is what you're doing, right? You are going to be inviting people to this private incident channel. And currently within the dashboard, we've had like a long time of dealing with workflows, and we think we've managed to get workflows into a space where they're usable in a safe way. And if we're going to expose those via Terraform and the way that people interact with it via code, we need to have like a bit of a think about that to ensure that like what we're building here for workflows is correct, and that the UX is as sort of as safe and as familiar to a user as it is via our dashboard. And then at the same time, we were working on on-call, and there is a level of like expectation that users have around using infrastructure as code to manage their on-call resources that we just knew that we had to support it, right? Like we couldn't not get away with, but like we didn't want to have customers in this halfway house, right? Where they wanted to Terraform their schedule operation, but they couldn't, right? And because we didn't support it yet, so we knew that on the release of on-call incident that we were going to have to support the management of schedules via Terraform. It's critical technical and business infrastructure. People want to manage this thing in code. They want to have the authorization in order to make changes here, so that their like business operations can't be impacted by some user in the UI that they have no sort of like audit log of how that's occurred. But similarly, it's like really complex, right? Like this here on the right is a follow the sun schedule, which as the sun goes over the earth, new people come on call in daylight hours and then rotate off, right? And this is 3 rotations are required to support this, each for like each of these geographical regions. And although this is not the most complex schedule in our interface by any means, it still becomes unwieldy to write the specification out for this in an API response. And there's a whole load of parameters that affect how schedule calculation works. And when you're providing a user with that to get them up and running, you want to make sure that they have the easiest sort of job of doing that as possible. And when we are writing this in infrastructure as code, like these are some of the most complex resources that I've ever applied in a Terraform apply. The problems we have here are shared, right? So like in both of these circumstances, we have parts of our system which we have been enforcing a walled garden for, right? Like we've been making sure that users manage them through the way that we built, and we spent a lot of time in order to make sure that our dashboard interface for doing this works and like feels great. And as we're sort of exposing these parts of our system publicly for the first time, we want to ensure that users continue to have that great experience, right? That even though they're outside of the context of our dashboards, that the users that are like interacting with and building upon these resources feel like really good and have like a happy experience and find that they're guided to the right solution that works for them. So how do we go about doing that? So our dashboard UX has been like polished like really, really hard over the years. We've tried very hard for many years now, and in the case of both schedules and workflows, we've basically built like full editors, right? So the workflows editor is a large, complicated app in and of itself that's buried within our app that allows you to create, preview, test out what a workflow execution would look like. We've built basically an IDE in our web browser for you to like interact with these schedules. And this is also the case for interact with these workflows. And this is also the case for schedules, right? So like we have a schedules editor, which when you're making changes to the schedule, you can get the 2 like examples of each schedule side by side, and you can sort of eyeball like, oh, does this make sense? Is this person on call at the right time? And you can apply those changes in the future as well. And you can also do this using Terraform if you want to. So you can say, next month we want Liz to join the rotation, for example, or we want to take Rory off the rotation. There's a whole load of like features that we've built in our UI and make sure that they're polished in order to manage what are these really complex resources in an easy way. So like, how do we continue this through into our dashboard? So the first way of doing this is we've built like a very strong building block for doing Terraform generation. So the first entry point I have said here is to make them not do any work at all. So a user can configure a workflow or a schedule in Terraform in our dashboard directly, and we'll give them an escape hatch, right? So either they want to create a new workflow from in Terraform that matches the specification that they've built in our dashboard, or they want to import a workflow that already existed. And we found that customers wanted to do this when they'd had schedules that workflows that they'd previously created in the dashboard that they wanted to migrate to manage on Terraform on the release of our Terraform API. And we have like gone really like deep on our Terraform generation in order to make sure that we can fully support these resources being exported in like a really like safe way, right? Like we want to make sure that the guardrails that we have in place for the management of resources in the dashboard also exists when you're interacting it via the API or through Terraform. And then we've also, as like large users of Terraforms ourselves, sometimes there are commands which you use in Terraform that you don't use every day, right? I would be lying if I said that I run Terraform import and it runs the first time every time, right? Like managing state in this way is something that some users of Terraform like just don't have to do that often. And when you're importing a workflow from Terraform, we totally agree and support making this as easy as possible. So like we'll write the Terraform command for you and we'll supply you with the correct ID. And here we sort of use the context that our dashboard has of interacting with you as a user and resources that we know about, and we power your infrastructure as code through our dashboard, right? Like they're working in harmony to achieve the goal the user wants, which is to manage these resources in infrastructure as code. And we sort of think that the code you generate is the interface. So like when we've generated these schedules, you can see that we're interleaving things from our dashboard throughout this sort of like creation of this schedule. So if you're importing the schedule and we already know this resource exists, we'll like have a comment that like links you directly to that schedule. We take our API documentation and we place that into the Terraform, right? If you don't want this like commentary, you don't have to have it, but it's very useful sometimes when you're looking at this Terraform, say that you've not used the instant UI that much and you want to understand what these things are, we'll interleave that commentary in the Terraform that we generate, right? So we make this easy for not just a consumer of our dashboard, but a consumer of Terraform that needs some guidance, right? Like every component in our UI that a user is able to edit here would have that sort of description and UX like next to it in the dashboard. So we think it's only right that we also supply that inside of Terraform itself. And the other thing we do is like also as we have the concept of ownership. Terraform generation has been available for applications in a while. Like there's a lot of SaaS apps that support the export of Terraform in order to be able to manage your resources as code. We think that this is like kind of table stakes. If you're releasing Terraform support in 2024, that you need to be able to support that. But what we do to take it one step further is we have the concept of ownership, right? So this is no longer a unidirectional link from the Terraform that we export to our dashboard, but the dashboard is also aware of the context that this has been applied from. Ownership like provides users with a source of truth as to where they're coming from, where this like configuration has come from. So we allow users to set a source URL. This means if I come across a schedule, I am directed to the Git repository where that schedule is created and checked in. And as I make changes to the dashboard, as we use Terraform lifecycle methods in order to claim the ownership of a schedule, right? So this means or a workflow. So this means we don't allow the editing of the configuration through the dashboard anymore without a user going through an escape hatch. This means that we won't have like state drift occur. Like it won't be the case that someone has edited something in the UI and not reflected those changes in Terraform. We just don't let a user do that in order to avoid that like awkward situation. This also means that but we don't want to make it like difficult for a user to manage these workflows. So to get around that, one thing that we do is we change the save button into an export changes button. So when a user has some configuration that exists in Terraform, that exists in the UI, we'll allow them to export those changes to Terraform and they can copy and paste them simply from our dashboard into where their infrastructure as code runs. This means that these things are working in consortium, and because we use the lifecycle methods, we know that this has occurred, right? So the user doesn't get into some halfway house state from which they can never recover. Like we understand when when operations have been taken in infrastructure as code and reflect those operations in our dashboard. We're restrictive, so we don't want to allow users to edit the schedule configuration for a schedule that has been managed in Terraform, right? Like a user has made an explicit decision in order to only manage that through infrastructure as code, and that is where the source of truth lies. So for example, we won't let you edit the rotate members of a rotation through the dashboard, but there's some sort of convenience operations that a user might want to take that we do allow to occur in the dashboard, right? An example of this is overrides. We support cover requests in our on-call solution, and it might be the case that I put in a recover group request from 5 till 7 because I'm going to the gym or something like that. When a user takes that sort of like cover request operation, we don't block that from happening, right? It's not configuration, it's an action a user wants to take against some configuration that exists. So it's like a happy medium of still having this like dashboard that is like uses the sort of work that we've done in order to make a schedule explicit and usable, but understands like where the source of truth lies here and points users towards it when they want to make changes to that. As part of this, we have built a whole management and management of resource like engine in the back end, right? And this means that these are generalizable. So currently we support this for workflows and schedules, but we have built the sort of building blocks inside of incident.io in order to be able to export this management of resources across the entire application. And that's what we plan to do, right? So like we are going to use the building blocks that we built here in order to be able to export and power this sort of like deeply coupled experience across the entire application stack. And we're really excited to do this. And we think that we've made great choices that makes this a lot more easy to do than something that two sort of components that don't speak to each other. We think it's a really, really powerful and allows users of both our dashboard and our infrastructure as code like interfaces to have the best sort of experience that they require. But thanks a lot for your time. I am very, very interested if anyone else is playing with ideas in this space or has any critiques of